Good morning. Good morning. Hey, y'all. I am Christy Hurt.
And I'm Jen.
And welcome back to Angels and Alibis. And this is the podcast where we bring out the dark stories of the Bible. I'm so excited for this episode. It's one of those Bible stories that everyone thinks that they know, but there's always so many layers to unpack.
Yeah, I'm ready to dive deep. I always learn something new on this show, and I know this story is going to be a wild one.
So, Jen, it's Labor Day weekend. Did you do anything fun, relaxing, maybe something a little scandalous?
Scandalous. Not this year. So I listened to my audiobook. I colored. I tuned out my family, which was great. It was just bliss. You know, I needed a break from the chaos, as we all do now and again. What about you? Did you do anything fun or scandalous?
Well, your weekend sounds perfect to me. I caught up on some reading myself. But enough about our weekends. Today, we're diving into one of the most famous Bible stories, the story of King David and Bathsheba. Now, it isn't just a tale of love and scandal. It's a story of power, temptation, betrayal, and devastating consequences. So lock it in. This one is going to be a roller coaster. We're going to see how a man who was once considered righteous could fall so far.
I've got my seatbelt on, and I'm ready to roll. It's crazy to think about how these stories, even though they are ancient, still resonate so much today. We see the same themes and playing out just in modern life all the time.
We do, exactly. So it's around 1000 BC in ancient Israel. David the king is on the throne. He's revered and mighty. He's at the height of power, a military hero, a divinely appointed leader. But behind the throne, there's a lot happening behind the scenes. David was at the peak of his reign. But even the most righteous can fall. It's a classic case of absolute power corrupting absolutely.
So wait, is this the same David as the story of David and Goliath? I loved that story when I was a kid. He was so brave, fighting the giant with only a stone. It gave me so much hope that the little guy could win.
You're right, it is the exact same David. Now, it's been about 40 years since that time has passed, and a lot has happened. David is now the king of Israel. He's not just a shepherd boy anymore. He's a seasoned warrior, a political leader, and he's incredibly wealthy. David's reputation as a warrior and leader is unmatched. But power can be dangerous. It can corrupt, and it can lead to some dark choices. And that's exactly what we're going to see today.
I love a good story of power and betrayal. For all our listeners, this story can be found in 2 Samuel 11 and 12 if you want to dig more into it yourself. But let's get into it. What set this whole thing in motion? Where does the slippery slope start?
Okay. So one evening, David is walking on his palace roof, enjoying the cool evening air, and he spots something that will change everything. It's a beautiful woman bathing. It's a seemingly innocent moment, but it triggers a chain of events with catastrophic results.
Yeah, wait a minute. So I have so many questions already. I thought David was a brave warrior, always out leading his troops. Why is he just walking around in his palace this evening? Shouldn't he be out there with his army? And why is there a lady just taking a bath on the roof? Is that like a normal thing back then?
Yeah, well, those are both really good questions. First, it is very interesting that David is not out with his soldiers. It's a time when kings were usually out leading their armies into battle. In fact, in my research, he had just woken up from a nap. Now, he He's just strolling around on the roof. This shows a big change in his character. He has become privileged, maybe even a little complacent. He was enjoying the comfort of the palace while his servants were out on the battlefield, risking their lives for him. Some scholars even believe that this was a sign of spiritual laziness, that he wasn't where he was supposed to be, which opened the door for temptation.
It feels like David's heading down the wrong road. He's lost his focus, his sense of duty, but that still doesn't answer why some lady was just up on a roof taking a bath. Was she trying to get his attention? Was it like some kind of setup?
Her name is Bathsheba, and she's the wife of Uriah, who is one of David's elite soldiers fighting out in the army. Now, it sounds kind of weird to us, but in ancient Israel, rooftops were not just for looking out on, but they also served as practical areas for various activities, including taking a bath. Bathsheba was likely engaged in a ritual bath that was common in that era. This was a time for purification, a way to cleanse herself. Now, think about it. Most people wouldn't be able to see each other from their roofs. But remember, David was in the palace, which would be higher above the other buildings. So he would be able to look down on the rooftops. So she wasn't necessarily trying to be seen. She was just living out her life according to the customs of the time.
Okay, that's making a little bit more sense. So what you're really telling me is that David's just being a creeper, taking advantage of his position just to spy on someone.
That sounds just about right. We could also say that because he was enjoying his privilege instead of fighting with his army, he ended up in a place where he was easily tempted. And from a distance, David is captivated. The temptation is huge. He knows she's married, but he's the king. He's used to getting whatever he wants. And that sense of entitlement is incredibly dangerous.
That's just a punch to the heart. I feel like that's a turning point in David's life, a critical moment where he makes a very fateful choice. I'm sure all of our listeners out there can think of a time in their lives when they were tempted and they regretted the choice that they made. I know I can think of a few times like that. It's like that saying, idle hands are the devil's workshop. It's so easy to fall when you aren't focused on what's important.
Yeah. And unfortunately, instead of turning away, instead of recognizing the temptation and doing the right thing, David sins for her, and he has his way with her. He abuses his power. He sees her not as a person, but as an object of desire. It's a gross abuse of his power.
And it makes me so sad. I used to think she was just taking a bath on the roof to catch the eye of the king. But this doesn't actually sound like that. He basically took advantage of her. I mean, he forced himself on her. Or do you think she played a part in it? Was she complicit in any way?
Well, in my research, I found a lot of different ideas on that, but really no one thinks that Bathsheba was trying to seduce David by taking a bath on the roof. That was just common practice, like we said earlier. She likely had no say in the matter when the king summoned her. Most reports I researched said that she was just following the king's orders. She probably was scared of what the king would do if she said no. The power dynamic was completely skewed. She was in an impossible situation, and David completely abused his authority.
Yeah, again, this is just so sad. This is the little shepherd boy that killed a giant with his faith in God, and now he's using his power to take advantage of a young woman. It's terrible how far out of God's plan we can go when we let our pride take over. It's a stark reminder that no one is immune to temptation, no matter how righteous they may seem. It's just a truly heartbreaking turn of events.
It is, and it gets even worse. Bathsheba gets pregnant, and now David is in a bind. He can't let this slip. not only because of the scandal, but because he is the king. Power means control, and control means covering your tracks. His reputation, his kingdom, everything is on the line. And he has to maintain the image of strength and righteousness at all costs.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people do when they're afraid to get caught. They start making bad decisions to cover up the first bad decision, and it just spirals out of control. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. It just keeps getting bigger and faster with each turn.
David is such a schemer. First, he calls for Uriah to come back from the battle. He pretends it's just a routine visit, but he has ulterior motives.
Wait a minute. He brings Bathsheba's husband home? It seems like that is the last thing he should be doing. That is insane.
Yeah, but think about it, Jen. Uriah has been cold and tired in battle. The king is allowing him to come home for a night to the warmth of his home and his wife. Do you know what I mean? David's hoping that Uriah will sleep with Bathsheba, and when the baby is born, everyone will just assume it's Uriah's. It's a desperate attempt to cover his tracks and deceive everyone.
Oh, David's good. Well, I mean, not good, but you know what I mean. He's thinking several steps ahead, trying to manipulate the situation to his advantage.
But Uriah is loyal to his men. He refuses to go home and sleep with his wife while his brothers are still out fighting. He believes it would be dishonorable to enjoy the comforts of home while his fellow soldiers are suffering. Now, David's desperation grows. Uriah's integrity shines through, highlighting David's descent into darkness.
You know, I'm not gonna lie. I know what that feels like, trying to cover something up you're embarrassed about and just getting desperate when it doesn't work. It's like digging yourself into a hole. The more you try to hide it, the deeper you sink. The anxiety must be overwhelming.
Yeah, I've been there, done that. So David tries one more time. This time, he invites Uriah to dinner and gets him drunk. David thinks that maybe this will make Uriah forget all about his brothers fighting and go to his wife for the night. He's pulling out all the stops. He's really going for broke.
Yeah, but let me guess. It still doesn't work. Uriah's too honorable. He's not going to compromise his values when he's intoxicated.
You're correct. Uriah is more honorable than King David, even after a night of drinking. So he goes back to the battlefield. Uriah's loyalty and honor stands in stark contrast to David's deceit. It's a powerful display of integrity.
Oh, I bet David's really feeling it right now. He has to figure something out. He's probably panicking at this point. What else can he possibly do?
Yep. So, David orders Uriah to be sent back to the front with a deadly order. Put Uriah in the fiercest part of the battle and then withdraw, leaving him exposed. It's a cold-blooded move. David is essentially ordering Uriah's murder. He's willing to sacrifice an innocent man to protect his own reputation.
Gosh, that is just wild. That's what happens when we try to solve problems on our own instead of just confessing them to God and, just asking for help. David just kept digging himself deeper and deeper into sin. It's really a cautionary tale about the the dangers of unchecked power and the consequences of trying to control a situation through deceit. It's also a reminder that sin actually has a ripple effect, hurting not only ourselves, but everybody around us too.
And that's exactly what happens. Uriah is killed in battle, a murder in the shadows, all to hide a secret. David has gone from a king to an adulterer to a murderer. It's cold, calculated, and criminal. But David, the powerful king, thinks he's covered his tracks. He believes he's gotten away with it. He believes he's untouchable.
That's when we know we've gone too far from God's plan, isn't it? You know, when we start thinking we're in control and that we can manipulate situations to our advantage, we forget who is really in control. And we forget that our actions have consequences, whether we really like it or not. I bet God is going to reveal everything. There's no way David can keep this under wraps forever, right?
You are so right. By this time, Bathsheba had mourned Uriah's death, as was custom at that time. But it must have been a very confusing time for her, considering all the circumstances. David sent for her. She became his wife and bore him a son. Now, on the surface, David thinks all is well. He's got the woman he wanted. He thinks he's covered up his crime. But in the shadows of power, like you said, secrets don't stay buried forever. The truth always has a way of coming out. And this case is no different. A prophet named Nathan steps in. And that's when things really start to unravel.
Yeah, a prophet. Now, what we learned about prophets is that they speak to the people for God. They are the messengers of the truth, often delivering uncomfortable messages. So this is going to be interesting. Is Nathan going to call David out directly, or is he going to use some kind of like roundabout way to get his point across?
Well, Nathan, being the wise and discerning prophet he is, approaches David with a story. He tells David a story about a poor man who only had one little lamb. The lamb wasn't just livestock. It was a beloved member of the family. The father raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him.
Okay, look, that's a sweet story, but I don't really know where Nathan's going with this. It sounds like a tale of a family's love for their pet. Is this some kind of parable? I'm not seeing the connection to David's situation here.
Oh, well, just wait, because one day a traveler comes to town to visit a rich man who lived there. This rich man had flocks and herds beyond counting, more than enough food for any guest. But instead of using one of the many lambs that the rich man had, the rich man stole that little lamb of the poor man's to serve to the guests. He deliberately took the one thing that meant everything to that poor man.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. That's just cruel and heartless. He has to be punished for that. How could someone be so selfish and uncaring? It's one thing to take what you need, but to steal something to steal the only thing someone has, that's just crazy.
That's exactly what David said. He was furious at the injustice and declared that the man be punished. David, in his righteous indignation, demanded justice for the poor man. He was blind to the fact that he was condemning himself. That's when Nathan drops the bomb and says, "You are the man."
Whoa, that is definitely a mic drop moment. I can only imagine the look on David's face when Nathan said that. It must have been like a punch to the gut. The realization that he was the rich man in the story, that he had committed the very injustice he was condemning.
David realizes he's been caught. His sins, the affair, the murder laid bare. The consequences are severe. Bathsheba's husband is dead, and she's now a widow. David's actions set off a chain of events, a dominoes of tragedy. His family begins to fall apart. The child born from Bathsheba's affair dies. There's political instability, family strife, and a legacy marked by his moral failings. His sin has poisoned everything around him.
You know, all of this just because David couldn't say no and look away. One moment of weakness, one selfish decision led to just so much pain and suffering. It's really a stark reminder that even the small choices that we make can have enormous consequences. You know, if only he had just resisted that initial temptation, none of this would have happened.
That's what's so compelling about this story. Beyond the scandal is the idea that even someone like David, loved by God, is not immune to sin and consequence. It's a story of power and vulnerability, of a price paid for secrets, greed, and betrayal. And it reminds us no one is above accountability. Even if you're the king, we have to answer for all of our actions eventually.
Yeah, and you know, despite everything, there is a message of hope in there too, because David does actually repent. He shows remorse, and God forgives him in the end. But the scars really do remain. He learned a hard lesson, and his story serves as a warning to us all. Our listeners can read Psalms 51 to see David's prayer to God, a raw and honest expression of his guilt and his plea for forgiveness. It's a powerful testament to the possibility of redemption.
So that's it for today's deep dive into the story of David and Bathsheba, a story of temptation, crime, punishment, and grace. It's a story that continues to resonate with us today because it speaks to the timeless human struggles with power, desire, and the consequences of our choices.
Yeah, thanks for listening to Angels and Alibis. It's been a pleasure dissecting this complex and fascinating story with you all. We'll see you next time. Be sure to reflect on the lessons we learned today and how they apply to our own lives. And remember, no matter how far we fall, there is always hope for redemption. Thank you.